Hey guys, Schultzy Phillips here. Welcome to my October 19th DVD update, where I talk about all the DVDs and Blu-rays I've gotten over the last 2 weeks or so. Now, the first one I got from Warner Brothers is the new horror film, The Conjuring. Well, The Conjuring is directed by James Wan, who also directed the first Saw film, the Insidious films, does really cool horror films. I've, recently announced, though, that he's not going to be doing horror films. He's pretty much said, at all, but hopefully he comes back, at some point down the line and does more, because to me, he's really, really great horror director and has, the real old school 80s, 70s vibe to the movies, which I really like a lot. I know he's going to be going into action films, so I'm wondering if they're going to have kind of an old school vibe to them or not. The Conjuring's basically about, ghost hunters, and these two that, not like, the ghost hunters kind of shows, but the kind of people that go into houses and kind of see if it's haunted and prove it if it is and isn't. And it's, the characters are Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are, real characters in real life who have, been doing that for years in the past. And this is basically about one of their, most haunted cases that they ended up working on. And, to me, it's basically about a family who's haunted that moves into this new house, and there's all kinds of crazy images in this thing. This movie, I can kind of judge on how scary it is if I actually, get totally creeped out by it. And this movie actually gave me quite a few bad dreams. I seldom do I ever watch a horror movie that really gets to me and has images in it that actually creeps me out. And there was a couple images in this that I actually, had a dream in my house about the same kind of thing that really creeped me out. Especially one thing that involves something over a dresser. I'm not going to get into all the details on it. I'm not going to get into too much details about the movies, the details of it, because I don't want to give away any of the scares. Now, the trailer, I'd probably recommend not watching a lot of the trailers if you haven't seen them, because they give away a couple scares, not too many of them, but if you want to go into this movie not knowing a ton about it, that's what I would do. I thought it was extremely effective, though. Lili Taylor plays the wife in the film, of the family that's haunted, and the other actor is basically known most, Ron Livingston, known most for the Office Space film, and then an episode of Nightmares and Dreamscapes. He's popped up in a whole bunch of other movies. Those are kind of the things that I always remember him for. But this, for both of them, was a very different movie. And the leads, though, that are investigating the house are Ron Livingston and Patrick Wilson, Vera Fleming. I don't know, this is just, to me, was a very, very effective haunted house film. One of the best horror movies this year, probably the best, in my opinion, especially, too, for creeping me out. It's got a bunch of features on here, interview with the real family that was haunted, and then a feature on here with James Wan talking about his tips and things like that for scaring people. If you like, old school, slow burn, haunted house films, and you want to see one that's done now, but extremely well done, would highly, highly recommend this one. And the next movie from Warner Brothers as well is Pacific Rim. It's a really cool venticular cover on this one as well. Directed by Guillermo del Toro, who also directed the Hellboy films, Blade 2, Pan's Labyrinth, Devil's Backbone, a lot of really pretty cool movies. And this is his take on kind of like Godzilla type big giant monster films. Basically, in the future, these giant creatures have basically come out of the sea and are basically attacking, the world. And they end up building these giant robots to try and fight them off. And in the future, the robots pretty much have all been destroyed. And I think there's only 2 or 3 left, and it's the very, and they're about to put this program out and, basically trying to figure out what else they can do, because this program is not working and they're all being destroyed. These monsters keep getting more and more powerful, and it's basically about these 2 people who, it takes 2 people to power the robot, and the one character who, in the beginning of the film's brother died with him while he was controlling the monster, and he's kind of been out of commission and kind of just doing, just working regular jobs and not, working, controlling the robots in the movie. He ends up coming back to try and, basically they need somebody to try and control the last of these robots to try and put a stop to this and end this. It's just a very well done giant monster, versus robot film. It really has that old school Godzilla vibe, and really, really well done effects in this movie, because the movie is pretty much all, CGI special effects, and it really pulls it off pretty well. I would say, like, perfect, in a sense. And they have mixed elements in here of, real aspects. Bunch of features on here, too. Featurettes about the making of the movie and the special effects, an auto commentary, and I believe it had deleted scenes on here as well. Can't remember for sure if it did, but this is just a really, really well done giant monster film. Would highly recommend people check that one out. And the next one I got from Disney is Disney Pixar's Monsters University, and this is the Blu-ray DVD digital copy. This is basically the prequel to the Monsters, Monsters Incorporated, and it has the characters, now I always mess these names up, Mike Wazowski and James P. Sullivan. For some reason, I always say Lewis P. Sullivan. I don't know why. It's basically about them, how they met, and it's them meeting in college at Scare University. And, when they first met, they, didn't get along with each other, weren't friends, and kind of have all these kind of problems in school. And they're in the Scare program at the school, and something ends up happening, and kind of because of their not getting along and kind of fighting with each other, they end up getting, a problem that ends up happening with the school. Then it involves sequences in here with them in, like, basically a fraternity kind of thing and having the scare games. It's one of those movies that's kind of hard to say too much about it because, from the trailers and things like that, they don't show all the aspects of what happens. It kind of reminds me, though, like with the scare games of things like, classic 80s films of like Revenge of the Nerds and those kind of movies where they have, the games. Because a lot of like the 80s movies, when they had like fraternities and things like that, always had like the game scene, when they like had to win something and kind of overcome it. And it was kind of like that. It's, it's, of course, it's a G-rated film, so it's not like Revenge of the Nerds in that sense, but just kind of like that kind of a movie about the games and things like that. I got a whole bunch of features on here. The short film, The Bonus Umbrella, commentaries, and featurettes about all the aspects of the film, Scare University, about the music and things like that. Of course, the Pixar Disney films always look so good on Blu-ray. There's also a 3D version of this film available as well. Would definitely recommend this if you like Monsters Incorporated. And the next one from Magnolia is I Give It a Year. This is a pretty funny romantic comedy about this couple who ends up just getting married, and even at their wedding, everyone's around them going, they're not going to last. I give it a year, and it's not going to work out. And it pretty much, the second they get married, it shows them at a marriage counselor, things have not worked out. And they end up pretty much getting tempted by other relationships. The wife ends up where she works, ends up meeting this client that she starts to like, and she doesn't want to even tell this person that she's married. She's kind of so unhappy with this relationship. She takes her ring off. He has no idea. The husband ends up kind of becoming friends with her, starting to see his old relationship that he was with for years, who played by Anna Faris, who went away to Africa for years. So it's kind of like them both, the second they get married, meeting other people that are kind of more of the perfect people for them, but yet they're stuck in this relationship, and it's kind of like what ends up happening to them and what they end up doing. Just a really good take, and different take on these kind of romantic comedies, and it's from the writer of Borat and Bruno, so it kind of has those kind of crazy, over-the-top elements thrown in there, so it's kind of, real R-rated and everything. I thought it was just a fun movie, and it's, Stephen Merchant, who is in, Idiot Abroad and a bunch of other things, he's always really funny, and he has some of the funniest lines in this thing. Just if you like romantic comedies and like a different take, and like I said, from the writer of Borat and Bruno, in that kind of vibe, would definitely check that one out. The next set I got from Time Life is a really cool set. I was really looking forward to watching these, and it's the Dean Martin, the complete collection of the celebrity roasts. And these went from like the early 70s up until, I think, 1984. And it's got a whole bunch of people in here. It's kind of like, if people haven't seen these, and I never had seen any of them before, I don't know if they had ever rerun these after 84 when they ended. But it's got a whole bunch of people in here who are roasted, like Lucille Ball, Don Rickles, Betty White, just a whole bunch of people. The one that I loved that was roasted was Mr. T, and Gary Coleman is on there doing a Mr. T impression. It's a huge set, though. Got a whole bunch of discs in here. do a quick shot inside. But a whole bunch of discs in here. And bonus discs as well. It basically has interviews as well. Some of the roasters, some of the people too, who are on, the Comedy Central roast. But it's pretty much like those kind of roasts, and it's kind of interesting, seeing the kind of humor that they could get away with back then. How some of the stuff is, now is so politically incorrect. Just what was kind of like the norm with comedy back then is so different. But it also has stuff from the Dean Martin variety show. But just a really fun set of these classic roasts. And like I said, it's a lot like, what the precursor to the Comedy Central roast. Although with these roasts, it was very different the way they were kind of presented. It was more done, with the person, and then they were actually roasting them, and they didn't kind of poke fun, the roaster at, the other roasters on the panel. They kind of kept it more to the person. But, people like Don Rickles, though, he would always go on there and, roast the other people. Just a really great set. If you have seen these shows as a kid or things like that, like I said, with me, I had never seen them before, but was always interested in seeing them. And it's up on Time Life. I'll put the link where you can get it, because I believe that's the only place you can get the whole set. The next one from Magnolia as well is Europa Report, and this is one that I was really looking forward to seeing. It's kind of a more serious take on, going into space, because it has elements of things like, some kind of a presence on, in space, but it's way more, a serious in tone kind of film, and it's all basically filmed from the camera's perspectives on the spaceship, and they have kind of a camera that they move around with, but they basically go up. This is the first mission to the furthest of space that anyone has ever gone before. A human being has actually ever gone. And, things are going fine. It's basically to the moon of Jupiter. And, on the way, everything's going fine, and then they end up losing communication. And you see this early on in the film with NASA. Something has gone wrong, in the mission. And it's basically showing the leading up and after, because they end up recovering the footage, after the communication was lost. It's them basically up in space and, on the way, and then basically getting to Europa, and what ends up happening there. There's some really cool elements in this, and I like the technique because it's very different, putting it all from the perspective of the cameras, making it kind of found footage, sort of, but not exactly, because it's, the space cameras, and it was a lot better than the other space movie recently, which was the one that was kind of pitched as a real mission. I forget the name offhand of what that one was. This is just a really well done, kind of like a 2001 vibe to it. Just, I don't know, and the actors are really good. The main actor in this was the one from District 9 and Elysium, or I believe that's the name. The next one from IFC, and this is one that I've heard a lot of people talking about, ask me about it, and it's Room 237, and it's basically the documentary, well, not exactly documentary, it's basically talking about The Shining. And it's really the whole aspect of what this is people watching The Shining, watching scenes and talking over them and talking about their theories of what it all means. And after a while, it's kind of starting to feel like you might not lose it a little bit, because it's like them picking apart every single aspect of the movie and this picture is of a woolly mammoth, or whatever they were saying that it was, and this can is about the background with the Native American on it was about the Native American war, of taking their land, and this was about, Stanley Kubrick trying to tell us that he faked the moon landing, and they were kind of picking apart some interesting things to it. It was one of those kind of things. There's certain movies like The Wizard of Oz. They talk about the Munchkin at the end. They say he killed himself. It was kind of like that. You know what I mean? Picking apart every little thing about it and saying that this is what this means, making these kind of weird jokes. And when the guy stands up, it looks like it's all these weird things. I kind of liked it though, but it was just so peculiar. It's got a bunch of features on here, some deleted things, deleted scenes, and the making of the music. The music in this was really cool. They tried to give it an old 80s vibe to it. And, they used clips of movies like Demons you know, for the horror scenes. You know, I mean, for the scenes when they were actually showing people watching in the movie. It was kind of a funny choice to use demons because they were even showing that blind guy in the seat. It took me forever to figure out what it was. They were, you know, what they were using. Then I saw the pimp guy from Demons, and I'm like, now I know right away what it is. And the next one is one that I've been looking forward to, you know, to seeing for a while, and it's John Carpenter's Halloween, the 35th anniversary edition. The reason I was really looking forward to seeing this was the new documentary on here, The Night She Came Home, which basically follows Jamie Lee Curtis when she's going to her first horror convention ever. And I believe, you know, from following Sean Clark, who's, you know, on Facebook and known Sean Clark for a while, he was posting pictures about this while she was, you know, the event. It was kind of funny. I remember seeing the picture he posted that he took, you know, with his phone. It was kind of funny. But it was a documentary on here following her around and kind of meeting the fans. Saw a couple people I knew in the video as well, so that was kind of cool. It was basically, you know, the fans waiting in line to see her. I will say this convention really had it together. They even had people sitting down while they were waiting, and it was real organized. Like, I've never been to Horror Hound weekend, but they really seem like they have it together from looking at this convention, like just like the planning and everything. You know, if you haven't seen Halloween, though, everyone's seen that movie, you know, about the killer that comes in the middle of, you know, the night, and you know, everybody knows the Halloween movie, but it's got the new transfer on here. Really looks really good. But like the documentary, like I said, with Jamie Lee Curtis is really what I would definitely recommend picking it up for. It also has the TV footage, which I believe was on one of the old DVDs a while back. Now, this is the edition that has the booklet in here. And there's another version out that I've been starting to see in stores now, which is in a regular Blu-ray case. This is the much cooler one. So this is the one I would definitely look out for to get the, I've seen like at Walmart and places like that, the plain edition. Now, the next one from Anchor Bay is the Ryan Gosling film, Only God Forgives. You know, this is from the director of Drive. Really like this one. It's very weird movie, very weird, different film. I mean, Ryan Gosling probably says in this whole movie a page of dialogue. It's pretty much, for the most part, a silent film. I mean, there's dialogue, but very little. You know, even parts when you know the actors are talking and they put music over it. But, you know, the composer, there's a feature on here with the composer talking about the scenes and things like that. He does amazing music. And there's the basic concept of this is Ryan Gosling, I think he owns it or runs this boxing place in Bangkok, China. And his brother ends up going off one night and ends up with this prostitute girl and ends up killing her. And he basically, the police come and the guy is like, you know, this kind of bad police officer. And I think he's like called kind of the Vengeance of Death or something like that. And he basically ends up, you know, putting the brother in with the father of the girl that he killed, and the father kills him, and then he ends up basically, Ryan Gosling's mother comes to Bangkok, and she's kind of nuts, and wants to get the person who did this to the brother, you know, killed him, wants to kill him. And it's, you know, of course, it's that police officer guy that kind of brought this whole thing to happen. And it's kind of them after the guy. And there's these crazy scenes with the police officer who's got this samurai sword and these visions of, like, the guy killing people with it. And there's crazy over-the-top scenes in this. I don't know, it's just a really weird, kind of reminds me of a Stanley Kubrick movie mixed with a David Lynch film. Like, both of them, I bet, would really love to, you know, hear what David Lynch would think of a movie like this. And Stanley Kubrick would definitely love it because it's got those real open shots and things like that, and like the kind of lighting, a little bit like Eyes Wide Shut. I don't know, just really like this one. It's gotten some really mixed opinions, but I think it's just because it's such a weird movie and so different from Drive. It's just funny, though, how Gosling, in his movies, always is kind of like a mute. Even in Drive, he doesn't say very much. And, of course, there's a scene in this when he gets angry. When Ryan Gosling gets angry, he has, like, this, kind of like me, I have, like, a real high-pitched voice. Like, if I scream and things like that in movies, and he's like, put in the basket! I don't know. It's always kind of funny when he screams, especially in The Place Behind the Pines. The next one from Anchor Bay as well is Embrace of the Vampire, which is the remake. I don't know if I had ever seen the original one with Alyssa Milano. Need to watch that one at some point. So I don't know how much of a remake per se this one is, if it's a total direct remake or it's kind of like aspects of it. But it's about a girl who ends up, from a Catholic school, ends up going to getting a scholarship to this college. She's played by Shannon Hennendel, who I actually met and worked with on this TV show Look. She's been in a bunch of other stuff, Rites of Passage, but I met her in Look in the last episode. I was in there with her. But this is just a really, I like this one. It was kind of her going to the school. You kind of don't know exactly, like, it's a vampire film, so you kind of don't know exactly all the aspects of it. You see the movie opening up, though, with her mother and like a vampire killing her, and all these kind of scenes, but it's got all the aspects, though, of like the classic vampire movies, especially when you have scenes in these kind of girl schools and things like that. They always have like the lesbian scenes and things like that. Like I said, it's the classic scenes of these kind of movies. It's really hard to explain, though, exactly what's going on, though. She's kind of there, and she ends up meeting this teacher, and the fencing teacher. And I was thinking, too, I haven't seen fencing in a movie in a long time. I was thinking, like, the last time I remember seeing that was, like, Parent Trap and, like, Richie Rich, I think, or North, or one of them. I was thinking, like, when was the last time I've seen fencing? It seems very dangerous, too, like, watching it. But it's basically, there's basically a vampire in the movie that's kind of tempting her. I can't say too much about it, but I thought it was pretty well done, though. Like I said, too, really feels like an 80s film with the aspect of, like, just the whole vibe to it. But definitely would recommend checking out. Like I said, though, I don't know too much about, how much of a remake it is, because I haven't seen the original one. The next one from Millennium is Plush, which I really ended up liking. Didn't know too much about this one going into it. Had an interesting cover. Mainly wanted to see it because Emily Browning is in this, who was recently in Magic, in The Uninvited, and, Sucker Punch, which I don't think I had ever watched that one. She's always been really good. And Xavier Samuel, who was in The Loved Ones, which is a great horror film. And this is from the director of Twilight, but doesn't have that kind of, it's an R-rated to the, all the way, not a PG-13 kind of movie. It's basically about this rock band, Emily Browning and her brother. And the brother ends up dying, overdosing on drugs, and she ends up having to find a new lead singer, played by Xavier Samuel, and he's kind of, seems like he's perfect. He's a really good, with playing guitar, and kind of has lots of ideas for music and things like that. And they kind of start to have this relationship, yet she's married, and kind of like, she's like, well, this can only happen while we're on tour. And the guy is very clingy and kind of, the movie opens with you seeing this woman getting rocks poured on her and dying, and you kind of don't know what it means. And it comes, you find out later what it means. The best part of this movie, in my opinion, was the last 30 minutes, because it really goes to a crazy elements with this. But it's basically about, this guy who's kind of obsessed with her. And, you little by little, you find out more about his obsession. And it's kind of about that, about people that get obsessed. And just deals with a lot of aspects in this. Was just really a lot of elements to it. Were pretty deep elements to this movie, and you could kind of read into it in a lot of ways. What everything meant with it. But I really liked it. If you like Emily Browning, though, she's really, really good in this. Just a lot of weird aspects of it. Really liked it. Like I said, it was very different than a lot of people would think it is. The kind of directions that it goes. The next one from E1. And I like this, too, because it's in a green case. And I showed this one in the DVD shopping video. Said I would be talking about it. And it's Abducted. And it's, it was filmed all at the Linda Vista Hospital, which I always loved that hospital. Because they filmed that, in so many horror movies, like Penance, and just tons and tons of movies. It's one, always see people taking tours of it, and I always want to kind of go in there, but always kind of afraid of it. Because it's very creepy looking, this place. This movie, though, it kind of looks like in a couple scenes, they kind of used like scenes that might have been dressed already for something else. I'm not totally sure about that, but it kind of looked like that. It's basically, though, about this couple that's in Griffith Park. They're on their vacation. They came to LA for a vacation, end up getting abducted and put into this weird, into the hospital. And they don't know how they got there. They don't know what's going on. and it's pretty much them locked away in there, giving giving water and these weird like protein bars, and they kind of after a time keep disappearing and coming back in, and they have like marks on their back. Things are going on. Other characters kind of come in and go out and kind of have their idea of what's going on, and kind of like about aliens and about this and about that. Just a pretty creepy movie about like all this kind of holding these people captive with a kind of a different take on the whole thing. I really liked this one, though. I thought it was an interesting one, just about what was happening in it. And the next one from E1 as well. This is one that I've been looking forward to watching for a long time. And it stars Daniel Harris, Tiffany Shepard, Ashley C. Williams, from the Human Centipede films, and Josh Filter, who was in Ace Ventura Jr., and he was in lots of stuff, when he was younger, like License to Wed, and a bunch of things. And Nancy Drew, you'd recognize him right away, but he's like grown up in this. He had some funny parts in this. And I was actually really excited to see Daniel Harris and Tiffany Shepard in the same movie, because they, it's Hallows Eve, because they never haven't, been, as far as I know, in a movie together. The sad thing is they don't have a scene together in this. Because you can kind of tell that they shot them in 2 different times, and they probably weren't even there at the same time. I doubt it, because if they would have, I don't know why they wouldn't have given them a scene together. Because in my opinion, they're really, when it comes to now, like the current Scream Queens, they're, in my opinion, at least in my opinion, the top 2 modern Scream Queens, and then next to, from classics, Linnea Quigley. But this is basically about, it starts off with these kids chasing this girl in the beginning of the movie, and she ends up falling down and getting run over by this tractor, and her face gets all screwed up, and it's years later, and she's kind of wearing this mask. They didn't show the mask as much as I wanted. It kind of dropped off and fell in the movie, so you didn't really get to see much of this thing that she was wearing. But it's basically about, like, at this Bates, I think it's at the Bates haunting. It's like a haunted attraction, where you go through like a corn maze, people come out and scare you. It's actually a real thing as far as I know. And it's kind of like when they're there, the kids who accidentally messed this girl up and chased her and had her face get screwed up, they always come back every year, and they get invited back for some reason to this haunting. And this year they're all getting picked off one by one. It's an interesting movie. It's got some technical problems to it, like some of the audio, like when the scenes with Josh Filter, the audio, and you can kind of hear the tractor over it bad, like some of that kind of stuff. Not a perfect movie. I liked it, though. I liked the aspects of it, and I really, I'm a fan, like I said, of Tiffany Shepard, and although Tiffany Shepard kind of just disappears in this movie, and I don't know why they didn't, give her more in it. That was the only thing that kind of disappointed me. Like I said, they should have had scenes of them together, but like I've said, I really think it was shooting these people, and they had them for like 2 days at a time, 2 or 3 days, kind of would shoot them out, because none of them, like the bigger actors, really interacted much. And there were some kind of aspects almost that I think they might have abandoned, or something. Like Ashley C. Williams' character was kind of like a witch in the haunted house, or doing these witch scenes, and they didn't really make any sense, like what the meaning to them was. The next one from Image, and this one was really pretty cool. This is another movie with the Hallows Eve title, All Hallows Eve. And I think that movie took the title first, and this one came after, so this one had to be All Hallows Eve, which is my guess. And this movie has an extremely creepy clown in it. In my opinion, it's probably the creepiest clown, next to Pennywise, if not creepier in some of these shots. I mean, I don't know why, but this clown, it was really, really creeped me out, this clown. And I don't get creeped out by clowns. This is basically an anthology film. It's about, on Halloween, these kids are with a babysitter, and they're emptying out the candy they got. And in the candy is this VHS tape. They don't know anything about it, who put it in there, how it ended up getting in there. And they all want to watch it, and the babysitter's like, oh, make sure, there could be anything on there, so I don't know. And then they keep on kind of persuading her to finally put the tape in. And it's these, this scene of these woman that ends up getting, like, kidnapped and, like, kind of, like, tortured with the clown. And you could tell the first short was filmed years before. And that was kind of the short that got this whole thing made. And there was, throughout the thing, though, the clown is featured in every short, in one way or another. My favorite short in this was the last one, about a woman on a dark road, and, like, the clown, killing somebody at a gas station. That was my favorite one on the whole thing. There's really pretty creepy segments, especially the last one. But like I said, though, the clown really made it creepy. But like I said, it would cut back to the kids, but then the kids, after the first story, had to leave, and then it was the babysitter watching it. My favorite aspects, truthfully, were some of the stuff with the babysitter and the kids watching the tape. I almost could see that as a whole movie, like with those same characters doing something else. And I know in the commentary they were talking about wanting to do a whole nother movie with the clown. Definitely would like to see that. Like I said, it's very effective and really, really good effects in it. I believe the director did the effects or the makeup, like the prosthetic things in this movie. There's some really pretty cool work in this. The next one from Image as well is Idle Hands, starring Devon Sawa and Seth Green. This is one of those movies that I used to, like, it was one of my favorites in middle school. Like, I remember, too, I loved it because, in middle school, I used to really like The Offspring, and The Offspring had a song in this. We're actually in this movie. Back in the 90s, they used to do that, like in the late 90s, kind of would put bands and things like that in movies. They don't really do that as much anymore. But this is basically Devon Sawa's hand ends up getting possessed, and it's like hands going all crazy. They had a segment with a hand like this as well. And I don't know if it was in the Twilight Zone or Monster. It was, I remember one horror film, like an anthology, where they had that happening. But it's basically, the hand is going crazy and people are dying off, and just a really fun, crazy horror movie. It's one of Jessica Alba's early films where she started getting noticed in it. I don't know, I just really, really like this one. A lot of people in this movie, like The Friend and things like that, I have not seen the movie in a really long time. Kind of miss some of the actors that, that kind of the character actors who were kind of big in the 90s in this. But this is just a really fun, over-the-top scene with the hand, and the hand eventually is detached, and there's a lot of stuff in there with the hand on its own, kind of like Cousin It. And the next one from Image as well is Creepshow 2, which I really like this. Most people like this one as well. Of course, they don't like Creepshow 3, which to me is basically like Goosebumps, and kind of took a turn like that. So I didn't hate it. It just reminded me of things like Goosebumps. But the second one, to me, I love it because I love the scene on the raft. Well, because, it's an anthology film as well, and the scene, like, there was one with a Indian statue that ends up coming to life after its owner is killed, and, he ends up, like, scalping the people, and the second one's, the raft, people that end up swimming out on this raft, and when they're out there, this kind of green, like, this kind of black slime monster thing is swimming around, and if it basically gets on you, it, like, burns you, and it's a crazy idea. Like, I always wanted to kind of see it expanded into a whole film. The movie that they recently put out for Chiller, Beneath, was kind of like that, the whole movie out on the lake, and kind of an expansion a little bit to a similar kind of idea to this. The next one I got from Lionsgate is the movie starring Billy Zane, Red Clover, and it also stars Dave Davis, who was in Ghost Shark with me. I believe this had a different title. I think it was like Leprechaun, Leprechaun. I don't remember the exact title for it. So I think it was on Sci-Fi, but I don't know for sure. But it's basically, like I said, stars Billy Zane, and it's about kind of this girl that ends up going out with her father hunting, and ends up finding this 4-leaf clover that's red, and ends up burning into her hand. And there's this leprechaun that's kind of going around and killing people, and she's like pretty much trying to figure out what the clover means and like what the meaning is to everything like that. So it's kind of like a leprechaun, not like the Leprechaun movies, because it's more of a creature-looking leprechaun and way more of like a serious kind of tone to it. I don't know though. I thought it was a pretty well done, Leprechaun movies. Billy Zane doesn't do too much in it. I mean, he's kind of spread throughout the movie. I thought though he was pretty good for the most part in it. He always it's kind of funny, like he does more of like horror movies and things like that, but he hasn't done like a movies like Titanic or those kind of movies in years. I kind of think Titanic put a bad taste in his mouth or something, and he kind of prefers doing like indies and things like that. The next one I got from Image is Bounty Killer, and this is basically like in the future, kind of like a Mad Max, kind of one of those kind of futuristic, kind of has those vibes of the 80s, like apocalyptic world and things like that. Like Waterworld aspects and things like that. Wasn't a perfect movie. It was a fun movie, though. It was basically about, in the future, like the governments, has been shut down, and kind of like, but the government's back now, but about kind of like corporations and things like that taking over, and there's kind of like bounties out on the heads of these corporations, and these bounty killers are kind of like fighting to kill these people off and get the money for it, because they get huge money for killing them off. Gary Busey kind of pops in here and has kind of a crazy scenes in it. Kind of phoned in a little bit on his part, but it was kind of fun. I always like Gary Busey. Mindy Robinson is in this too. I kind of actually wanted to see that because she was in it. Has a couple things in this. Mindy Robinson was in The Whaley House. I was in. I don't know. It's just like fun, kind of, like I said, apocalyptic end of world kind of film with like I said, kind of an 80s vibe to it, mixed with like a bit of grindhouse elements. The next one from Cinedigm is Inspector Gadget Saves Christmas. This was the 1992 TV. I think it was on TV. I remember seeing this on VHS as a kid. Probably I used to have these as a kid with tape. During Christmas time, my mom would tape these like Christmas special things. Like the one that I had, I think, on the Halloween special, which I always miss and wish somebody would put this series out, was Drexel's Class. I don't know if anybody even remembers it. I was even at the guy's house once who was in Drexel's Class, and I almost thought I got access to the tape, but even he couldn't find it, or his son couldn't find it. It's like, now I feel like I'm never going to see Drexel's Class again. But this is the Inspector Gadget Saves Christmas, and it's basically about Mr. Claw. Is it Dr. Claw? Yeah, Dr. Claw ends up kind of taking over Santa, kind of, hiding him off, and he's controlling the elves, and Inspector Gadget has to go and save the day. Just a fun one. I used to watch this all the time as a kid. Really loved Inspector Gadget. The next one from E1, and this one I believe was a series in the UK, and this is the US version. They only did one season of this in the US though, and it's Primeval New World. Really cool cover on this, and really good. The main thing I want to talk about in this was really good effects on the dinosaurs. Some of them reminded me a lot of like Jurassic Park quality for like some of the dinosaurs, like really pretty well done, especially for a TV show. The effects were pretty decent in this. And like I said, I have never seen the original, which I believe there was an original of this. Never have seen that one, so I don't know if that one was worth checking out or not. But it's basically, there's like a portal that's happened, and dinosaurs are starting to come into the world and killing people off. And it's about a group of people who are kind of investigating it, and trying to put a stop to this, and having to fight off these dinosaurs. Just a really fun series. It looks really, really, really good on Blu-ray. The next one I got is Herman, starring Norman Reedus, from The Walking Dead and The Boondock Saints. And he's basically has like an online blog series that he does. And this kid, it's basically about a school shooting. This kid ends up, kills the kids at this school, and he's like, makes a video saying that he wants to go on this guy's show and tell his story, and it's kind of him telling his story of why, and kind of flashing back to the events and things like that. It's a kind of a hard movie to watch, these kind of movies about school shootings and things like this. Elephant, though, in my opinion, was the hardest to watch of that kind of thing, because it was so intense. Not one of those kind of movies you like to watch very much. And this one is basically Norman Reedus' character. The kid wants to see him because he had some kind of violence in his past, and he kind of thinks that he's the right person to tell his story to. And it's kind of about him telling it, and there's some real emotional scenes in this thing. Norman Reedus, some things I read about it though was how Norman Reedus plays it really down and quiet performance, and does a really good performance in this. Some of the other acting is a tad bit over the top compared to his, but the main kid, though, I thought did a really pretty good job in this. I would definitely recommend checking this one out. Just a really interesting story. And the next one is one that I've been interested in watching, and it's from Vinegar Syndrome, and it's Night Train to Terror. And this is another anthology film. The best stuff in this, though, is the stuff on the train. It's like this, people kind of partying, and then it cuts to God and the Devil's like talking about, then the devil's going, the train's about to crash. They're all about to be mine. And there's like, oh, they won't. And God's like, you won't get my souls. And then it kind of cuts to them watching these movies. And the movies that they're watching are kind of movies that were like never finished, or they were complete films that, again, they kind of cut them down and use parts of the movies to kind of make things. And kind of like, not gonna lie, not one of the stories that they're watching really makes any sense because they cut it up so much and kind of pieced it together. And I don't know, it's just kind of like, what is going on? Like, I didn't know what was going on half of these stories in this thing. It looks really good, though. Vinegar Syndrome is always doing a really good job cleaning up these movies, especially like Savage Water, and just some movies that you would never expect to see in the kind of quality that they are able to find prints of. It's an interesting anthology movie. Like I said, I really like the stuff, the '80s stuff with the kids on the train. They're always like dancing the same song, or "We're coming down." I don't even know what the song is, but they're like dancing to it the whole time, and you know that the train's going to crash, and it's just some crazy aspects in this. And the last one from Blue Underground is the film Snuff. I saw this in its cool red Blu-ray case, which I have never seen a red Blu-ray case in my entire life until this. So I liked it for that reason. It's from Blue Underground, and I remember seeing this one years ago. It was in a DVD case. It was kind of wrapped up like a bag, like a package, like a weird bag, and it's kind of about the director of Drive and Only God Forgives introduces the film. Kind of talks about how the movie is better for being a notorious movie. Kind of talking about not really knowing what it, kind of more about being talked about rather than what it is. Because what it is actually just like this movie, kind of like a cult movie about like this guy kind of controls these women, and he kind of films like attacking things, and it's all these peculiar aspects of it. But it was kind of, this movie was billed as having a real murder scene at the end, which was so funny that anyone ever believed that it was real, because it's some of the worst effects, and even the guy whose studio that they filmed talks about it on here. Those are some of my favorite things is on here. The interview with the director of Drive and the guy whose studio that they used, and just talking about how terrible the effects were, and that anyone would believe that they were real back then. They even had to investigate this movie thinking that it was real, kind of like with Cannibal Holocaust, what happened with that, when they thought that everybody from that had died, and they were going to put the director in jail. It's just an interesting one. Like I said, mainly the coolest stuff is the features on this. It looks really pretty decent for as old as this thing is, but it's mainly just about kind of like I said, it's more interesting on just kind of the story behind it for what it is. Anyway, though, guys, thanks again for watching. If you guys haven't seen my Carrie review video, I'll put a link for that under this video. Definitely check it out. It's a spoof of me playing Carrie. Anyway, though, guys, if you enjoy these videos, like I always say, definitely give this video a thumbs up. Please share it around, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.